Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me. For those who don't know me yet, I am Ron Levine from Mindfulness and Blue Jeans. I've been practicing mindfulness and insight meditation for 24 years, and I was introduced to this practice during a time I was dealing with clinical anxiety and depression, panic disorder. And I remember from those early days when I was trapped at home with agoraphobia because of the panic disorder, the hardest time of the day for me was typically first thing in the morning. I mean, the whole day was pretty difficult, but especially first thing in the morning. And that's something that even comes up to this day sometimes. And when I talk to other people, to some of my clients, it's a common refrain. Mornings can be really difficult. And of course, this isn't morning for all of you attending right now, but anxiety doesn't really care what time it is, right? So I've found that the tools and techniques that I've been using over the past couple of decades really help with managing this collection of manifestations, of phenomena, sensations, perceptions, thoughts, feelings, that coalesce into this experience that we call anxiety, fear, nervousness. And so I like to offer this as an ongoing session to offer some of these techniques that I have found so useful and still do for dealing with this experience, this quirk of the human condition. So why don't we jump in? We'll have a short guided sitting and then a little time for some Q&A or observations in the chat. Okay? I always like to begin by imagining I am suspended from the ceiling by a piece of string attached to the top of my head as a nice cue to sit up straight without adding any extra tension to do so. If there is tension right now, that's fine. We can allow tension to be tension. We don't need to try to get rid of it by forcing it away, adding more tension to the tension that's already there. That doesn't help, not in my experience. So any tension that may be here right now can be here. It's allowed. I also like to notice what is in contact with the floor, the chair, the cushion. So there's a sense of grounding. Even if I don't feel particularly grounded at the moment, there is something supporting me. It can handle the job. I can allow it to do so. So let's take a moment and notice that sense of grounding at the bottom, and the gentle lift at the top, and whatever else happens to be in between the two for us right now, however it is. And if you haven't already, you may begin to bring your attention to your breathing. Very often when we bring our attention to our breathing, we begin to shape it, control it. And we can do that, but we do not have to. We can allow the breathing to simply be as it is. The same way we can allow tension to simply be as it is. Is this easy to do? Not usually. We have thoughts and expectations, storylines about how we should be feeling, how our breath should be. And when things don't perfectly align with that, we try to force them into the way we think they should be. It's well-intentioned, but in my experience, not helpful. Not that we don't try to make changes to things that could use improvement, but we need to take a look. Are the attempts to make these improvements working? Are they helpful? In my experience, arguing with the tension, arguing with the breathing, I've never found that to be particularly useful. I have found it to cause more problems. The body knows how to breathe on its own. To what extent can we allow it to do so? And simply observe. Now, over the course of my practice, there have been times when I have found my breathing to eventually become so still it felt like I wasn't breathing at all. For a while I wondered about this. How could I be sitting here for so long, seemingly not taking in air? And at one point, I came across some passages from an American monk that I study and quote a lot, Thanissaro Bhikkhu, who said that this is a normal occurrence, and that the body, in fact, is taking in the necessary oxygen because I'm sufficiently relaxed, calmed, the requirements are low enough that the body is taking in the oxygen it needs through the pores in the skin. Found that fascinating. So sometimes we receive a cue, a visualization, to imagine that we're not just breathing the air in through the nose, but in fact, the entire body is taking in air, is saturated with air. And it turns out that's not just a visualization. It's actually happening. We are not taking in air and releasing air so much as air is passing through us, through our whole body, at every moment. Our bodies are suffused with air energy. Sometimes I like to particularly focus on the air coming in through the top of the head. Or perhaps through the temples, even the ears. What is sound that is reaching the ears but waves in the air? So clearly air is passing in and out of the ears, right? Has to be. Perhaps you can see the air coming in from the back of the neck or between the shoulder blades. Maybe you can feel the air in the lower back. Maybe you can feel the air in the entire back, a cushion of air. Supporting you. Just like the cushion or the chair or the floor supporting you from beneath. Perhaps we feel the air coming in, not just in the back of the neck, but the entire neck, coming in through the throat, directly. Perhaps entering the chest directly, the heart directly. Perhaps we can feel the air entering the stomach directly. Can we feel the air entering the entire upper body? Through our pores. No efforts required to make it happen. It can't not happen. We're surrounded by air. We're submerged in air. All passing in and out. And we don't have to do anything. It's working the way it should. How simply can we just allow it to do so? Perhaps we can also incorporate the lower body. Feeling the passage of air energy through the legs. Every inhale regardless of length or quality, or what we think of it, as well as whatever air is coming in through the pores, all ultimately reaches every cell in our body. That's not something we have to make happen. It's just something that happens. It's a process we can simply watch and feel. And when we can learn to relate to our breathing in such a way that we can simply watch and feel. That makes it a lot easier. Gives us the skill set to be able to watch and feel lots of other things that come up throughout our day. This is the foundation for clear seeing. Getting the lay of the land as it actually is. Not the way we think it is, the way we think it should be, the way we remember it was. How things actually are. Before we decide how to use our thought, our speech, our action, so that when we do use our thought and our speech and our action, we do so skillfully. In ways that aren't just effective, but also don't cause us more suffering in the long run. Which in turn helps prevent causing difficulties for others around us as well. So in this way, simply sitting and observing the breathing, and then going back out into the world and observing the breathing, isn't just a service for us. It's a service for others as well. Thank you, everyone. I'll be hanging on here for a few minutes and go through the chat if anyone would like to share anything. Bumpy, is anxiety your main topic? Seems to work out that way, not surprisingly. As I say, it was anxiety, clinical anxiety, depression, panic disorder, agoraphobia. This is all the stuff that brought me to my practice. I was on disability. I was housebound. So my life had stopped. It was crippling anxiety and panic is what brought me to my practice. And not surprisingly was my main focus in the early days. And I've branched out into other things since then. But I think I mentioned last time, one of the things that you hear a lot in spiritual circles is everything we do comes either from a place of love or a place of fear. And there was a time when I didn't really buy that, but the longer I engage in this practice and the more that I learn, the more that I see, the more that I uncover, I have a harder and harder time arguing with that. As humans, fear and anxiety, and I don't have time to get into the whole background of it here, but in some of my other sessions I do, they're a part of this human condition that we have to learn how to manage so that we do not cause ourselves suffering. So it is the main focus, even when I'm not talking about it directly, because I have lots of different topics, lots of different talks. Some of them are directly focused on anxiety, but even the ones that aren't, I probably don't have a single talk where there isn't some flavor of anxiety or fear running through it as a theme, because in my experience, when you dig deeply enough into the sources of any of the many ways that we as humans get in our own way and cause ourselves suffering, I don't think I've ever found something other than fear to be down at the bottom. So a long way of saying, yeah, it's a pretty common theme throughout my teachings. You'll find it pretty much everywhere. If not directly, then certainly indirectly. From Farnaz, mornings are worse when I wake up, the sinking feelings, overwhelmed. Yeah, remembering where and when I am. Yeah, there's that black cloud that settles. The way that I often describe it from my days when I was housebound, it was this overwhelming dread. It wasn't just fear, it wasn't just anxiety, it was dread that felt like, you get one of those weighted blankets. Those are like all the rage the last few years. Those blankets that are like 20 pounds, 40 pounds. It felt like trying to move with a weighted blanket on you. And it's just, there's just really not words for it. But yeah, overwhelming dread. And I have found that it's manageable. It is manageable. But I deeply resonate with what you're saying here. Hey, Michael. Good to see you again. Little trouble focusing on the breath this morning. Yeah, it happens. Sometimes I find it helpful to do some counting with the breathing. But it matters how we do the counting. For example, and this is something else I think I mentioned maybe last week, was if I count the inhales, I can space out very easily. That just seems to happen automatically for me. Counting the exhales I find much more challenging. And so that keeps me focused. So it can be handy to do things like practicing with counting, but experimenting to see which way helps hold the attention rather than having it become just another thing that we can quickly space out on. And that may change from sitting to sitting. We always have to experiment in this practice because our neuroses, they're not static. They're always changing. And they're crafty. And it's not because they're jerks. It's because they're trying to keep us safe. And so when we head it off at one pass, it finds a way, all right, let me try this way, and let me try this way, and let me try this way. Kind of becomes a little whack-a-mole, right? They think they're helping. And this is why we need to develop this clear seeing, so we can not only see where they're popping up, but also see, oh, it's not helpful. And we learn how to manage when and where they come up. From Francine, I agree that the idea that fear lies at the bottom of so much that it drives, getting to the point where I can acknowledge this has been a big plus. Yeah, isn't it though? I was doing my calming your inner control freak session the other day, and it's pretty much the same thing as I was saying there, is all of these various things that come up for us in life and throughout the day, whether it's our relationships, our job, concerns about money, concerns about whether we're good enough. You dig down deep enough, and it always seems to come to that same root, these fears, these ones that, like I say, they're baked into our DNA. This is evolutionary stuff. To try to get rid of it doesn't really make much sense. It's a part of who we are in a way, but that doesn't mean that we cannot learn how to manage it. It's not about eradication. Because really, trying to eradicate it is another strategy that just causes more problems. It's a form of denial. It's a form of aversion. It's not going to be effective, and it's not going to be skillful. We can learn how to work with it, learn how to manage it, learn how to listen to it. And in fact, you might, and on occasion even I've managed to do this, you might thank it. Because it's trying to help. It's trying to keep us safe. Fear just wants us to be happy too. So it's important that we have some compassion and understanding and even a little gratitude for our fears, even if they're not particularly comfortable or rational. Okay? Hey, Shane, let's see. I get anxiety about not sleeping. Yes. Good Lord, yes. Which makes me anxious when I'm trying to sleep. It seems to be a nasty cycle. Good Lord, yes. This is one of my biggest ones. Absolutely one of my biggest ones. I have spent a lot of time working on this. Probably more than I can get into here, but I will offer this for now. And again, like anyone else, you may feel welcome to drop me a line if you like, either on here or through my email, or we can talk more. But I will offer this for now. And in fact, by the way, I was doing this about 6 hours ago. I had insomnia last night. So I was just doing this about 6 hours ago myself. I said at the beginning of the sitting that if we are experiencing tension, it doesn't help to try to get rid of it, because that is adding tension to tension. So what I have found to be much more productive and instructive is to observe the tension and allow it to be the process that it is, and allow it to leave in its own time. The irony of doing that is that it tends to leave faster, because I'm, again, not adding tension to the tension in an attempt to get rid of the tension, as if adding tension to tension is going to result in relaxation. The same thing with the sleeping. When we have trouble sleeping, particularly when we get anxious about a lack of sleep, which again is historically one of my biggest issues, all we can think about is, I need to get back to sleep, and we try to force ourselves to get back to sleep. And that doesn't work. Force does not lead to relaxation. And when that doesn't work, we have that much more trouble getting back to sleep, which, and you know where I'm going with this, makes us more anxious and repeats the cycle. In Buddhism, the only thing we're concerned about, the only thing the historical Buddha was concerned about, was how do we alleviate our own suffering? Not pain. Pain is that thing we don't have a choice about. Somebody punches me in the face, I'm going to feel pain. I don't have a choice about that. The mental storylines I write around that, the stuff I do have a choice about, that's suffering. If I don't handle pain skillfully, I'm going to suffer. That is what I found over and over again. And it's fully in line with what the Buddha said I might find. It's what he found. It can be painful, uncomfortable to have insomnia. What we do with that, the storylines we spin about it, about what our next day is going to be like and how we're going to feel, and blah, 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 blah. Even if it's all true, even if it all turns out to be true, sitting there spinning those storylines and trying so hard, right? So hard to fall back asleep. I have found that to cause suffering. We already have the pain of the insomnia, but now we're adding suffering on top of it. If I simply observe what is happening, even if it's uncomfortable, not only does that stop the suffering aspect because I'm no longer getting in my own way, it also gives me a chance to start to explore these feelings of discomfort and the anxiety I feel around them. And as we explore them, they become a little more familiar. Not necessarily comfortable, but a little more familiar. And as they become a little more familiar, well, they're a little less scary. Because we don't like uncertainty. Uncertainty scares us because there could be danger there. As we start to get more familiar with something, some of the uncertainty begins to dissipate. And our comfort zone, which in my experience is always either growing or shrinking, it's not static, our comfort zone starts to expand a little bit. And this is how I've made strides with anything I've improved with, whether it's the agoraphobia or issues with sleeping or issues with eating, or you name a topic, I can tell you a way I've been anxious about it. And this is how I've been working with it for almost 25 years, is to stop pushing against and start to allow in. If you want to discuss that more, feel free to drop me a line, but please know I deeply resonate with lack of sleep and anxiety, that cycle. I could go on for days about that. Hey, Blossom, let's see. I remember a few years ago I had trouble getting out of bed in the morning. Yep, absolutely. No point getting out of bed. Nothing to look forward to. Been doing inner work. Yeah, not surprised to hear that. Yeah. That's another one of those comfort zone things. It's manageable as we work with it. These feelings of discomfort, they get closer and closer to the edge of our comfort zone until they actually start to become in the comfort zone. I mean, 25 years ago or 24 years ago, I was trapped at home. My life is better now than it even was before the anxiety and the panic I'll have. Back when my life was normal, This is really what it's about, is seeing how things actually are and how we are actually working with them, so that we can get out of our own way, drop some of the well-intentioned but ultimately dysfunctional coping strategies based on these, frankly, bullshit storylines we're telling ourselves, and decrease our own suffering. We may still experience pain and discomfort, that's going to happen, but not adding suffering on top. Yeah, beating ourselves up about beating ourselves up. Another one of those cycles. Like I say, everything has a way of begetting itself. I often say that emotions beget themselves. We don't just feel happy, we feel happy about being happy. We don't just feel sad, we feel sad about feeling sad. We feel angry about feeling angry. We feel anxious about feeling anxious. All right. we want to spot these cycles and see where to focus our attention such that we can not even slow and stop them, but reverse them. Create healthy, sustainable cycles that replace these vicious cycles that we have created for ourselves. It doesn't feel like we've created them for ourselves. They're so automatic, they're so habitual. But we are an active participant in them. We're not a passive recipient of our experience. It's not just what's coming up, it's how we're dealing with it. So I have found that working with these various tools and techniques that I offer are very effective for slowing, stopping, and reversing these kinds of cycles so that the things we are begetting for ourselves are healthy and sustainable and not causing suffering. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you, folks. Again, I'm Ron Levine from Mindfulness in Blue Jeans, and I hope you have a great rest of the day and evening. Thanks so much, everyone. Cheers.